Hello and welcome to Meeting People with me, Amal Pandya. Meeting People is a podcast where I have long conversations with rebellious, adventurous and sometimes courteous free spirits. Rosina, thank you very much for sparing the time. Welcome to the show. I've been advised by some well-meaning listeners to try and tee up the conversation rather than just diving in. So one of the things that's come up a lot on the show a lot is a lack of creativity in the modern age, risk-taking, imagination, and things like standardization, accreditation, exam taking, rote learning has come up a lot as part of the cause of that. And you are to education what Mary Berry is to baking, and so I was very excited that you agreed to come on and just talk to you about what it is you're doing to the education kind of problem. To kick us off, can you highlight the problem as you see it within the lens of your background, just your early life, what you started out doing as a painter and an artist, and how that sort of the countries you've lived in and how that's led to you being where you are today, to tee us off?
There's a lot of different things
Yeah.
in that question.
And we can flesh out
Okay.
all the preamble to that, but to start us off, how did Rosina get to where she is today?
Well, in terms of the sort of school experience, I didn't enjoy school very much, and I found, particularly told that I learned that I wasn't creative, and I learned what I wasn't good at, and I find that school teaches you a lot about what you can't do.
Yeah.
I mean, it does teach you what you can do as well, but I learned that I wasn't creative, and I learned that I couldn't draw, and all of these, and all I wanted to do was, all I wanted to do was be a mum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that at the time, even though they suggested I should do science, I wanted to be an artist so I could work at home and be a mum.
And who is they? That's teachers.
The teachers.
Yeah.
And they do those kind of tests on you to see what you're good at, what career you should have, and they were like, science is what you should do. But I was like, no, I want to be an artist. And they're like, well, you're not very creative.
Yeah.
You're not very good at art. And so I was really determined. So I'm like, I'm going to try. And I dealt with quite a lot of mental illness. I mean, I was at boarding school from age 7 to 18, and I enjoy that very much.
Mm.
I always felt quite different and never fitted in. And so I did actually end up going to St Martin's to do my foundation, and then was also told you couldn't draw and wasn't very creative. So I sort of steered towards three-dimensional design, and so my degree was in 3D design, metalwork, and I ended up having a forge and making wooden furniture.
Right.
And that was my first business, making bespoke furniture in wood and metal, and doing mosaics. And but what happened? I then actually I got pregnant, and that was really hard. Doing blacksmithing and wielding angle grinders and making furniture was really hard. And also I lived in Accra for a little bit in Ghana, as carving and trying to source sustainable wood there, and working in a factory there. And it was really hard to make affordable furniture. I had that William Morris issue of how do you make something beautiful and handmade, which is crafted, but then make it affordable. And there's too many imports in the UK in terms of furniture and from other countries, so it wasn't really it didn't feel like a viable business. So then I started painting, and I went and I did yoga teaching because I'd started yoga when I was pregnant. And so I did the yoga teacher training and went to Canada to the Shivananda ashram and did their course. And I went to Esalen in California and did Michelle Cassou's course called Point Zero Painting, and that was really transformative. Right. So that was 10 days of painting, and we did 5 rhythms dance as well, and I learned that I was creative, and that everyone is creative, and it is a human right to be creative. And it just blew me away that you could feel creative in movement, you could feel creative in visual expression, and it wasn't about technique and and brilliance, if you know what I mean, or like
or
expertise.
Or kind of talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I had a friend at the time who had been traveling around in Gabon, and he'd been making a documentary about the indigenous people and the in different tribes in Gabon and in the forest and in the jungle there, and he was recording music and recording their dance and their expression. And what he said was there was a real lack of mental illness, which was interesting because the infant mortality was quite high.
Mm-hmm.
There was lots of, and there was things like incest and all sorts of stuff that here would cause like lots of mental illness. But he said that everybody sang and danced and expressed themselves every day, adorned themselves, and it's like it was this human right that I got so much from that, because it's like it's our mental. I think dreaming is the way we express ourselves in metaphor, and that helps our subconscious mind process things. But I think art and creativity is our awaking way of doing that.
Yeah, your conscious mind, allowing your subconscious to sort of bubble up to the surface and you to express it with your hands or your body or whatever it is. Yeah.
But it's also a sense of belonging, because dreaming obviously is done alone, and it's not, and whereas art is done with, so singing and dancing and adorning is really about community and about your sense of belonging. And that thing in Avatar where it's like, I see you, it's about seeing somebody else and about belonging. And I think what was amazing too is one story he said that he went to one village and there was a teenage girl who had been suffering from jealousy, and the whole community got together and they had a whole ceremony, fire ceremony and a dance to help her process that emotion. And I'm just like, well, this is where we've all come from. What's happened? We've taken a wrong path somewhere, and there's a lot we can learn from indigenous cultures, and we need some of that back, because I think we've taken we've basically commoditized creativity, and so now it's about a finished product and how much value we can sell the song for, or sell. Once we were able to record sound, then it's no longer everybody sings and everybody's musician.
Yeah, you get these stats like, the moment a book crosses 247 pages, the sales drop off by 30%. So all publishers force their writers to therefore, all the books start becoming the same length, all the songs, the pitch kind of narrows to a certain range, where the algorithm kind of defines the highest scalability across the widest audience, and that kills it effectively.
Well, it's all about a product, and I don't think that's what creativity is about. So when everyone's like terrified right now about AI replacing artists and saying, that AI can produce music, AI can produce paintings and write novels and all of this, I don't find that scary to me, because that's not what art is about. Art is about community and belonging and expressing yourself, I think. And this is what I found, and I think it's a right that every human has to experience it. And so it's about the process, and AI is not experiencing that. It's not having that collaborative process and that sense of belonging that you get from it, and sense of identity too, and exploring the world. It doesn't have that same meaning. So hopefully this new moment of it will take us back to really value what's important about creativity. And so then a key moment then after that was we moved down to Devon, Cornwall border, to set up retreats doing creative expression. And so using blending sort of yoga, movement, and doing sort of dance, singing. We had like creative writers, as well as doing this 0.0 painting in retreats. And while I was living there, I watched Ken Robinson's TED Talk.
Yes, what a great talk. Yeah. The guy's a comedian almost at the same time.
It's amazing. That was like 20 years ago now, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, he's no longer with us, is he?
Really sad.
It was a big loss. But I think, watching that for so many people, kind of talks. God, this guy's put to words what I've been thinking or feeling, either about your own school life or your kids' school life, or mindless clerical work was his phrase, wasn't it?
Yes.
How do we expect people to be who they can be if all we do is force them into a room and do mindless clerical work. So sorry, you
Yeah.
watched that.
No, and also the whole of education is protracted university entrance, and there's so many quotes in that.
Yeah.
I literally have them all up in my I'm still obsessed with that talk, and it's the most watched, the most shared
By a long way.
Of all TED Talks, which is amazing. So it means it resonates with everybody, and then that's a global resonance that talk had. And I mean, the title of the talk is "Do Schools Kill Creativity?"
Yeah, because you're saying it's a human right, and it's like we're trampling on it at a pretty young age. We're stamping it out. So sorry, get back to how you saw this TED Talk, which everyone should watch.
Yeah, so it's all about how we express, the children. Are, if you're not afraid to make a mistake, if it's not always about the outcome needing to be perfect, you just need to have a go. And that's what his main message is that children need to have and everyone needs to have the opportunity to just have a go without this outcome. Like, the drawing of God, and it's like no one knows what God will look like. Well, they will in a minute, because this kid's drawing a picture of God. It's just like, it's very frustrating. So I was really inspired by that, and I'm like, right, I'm on a mission now. I felt like I want to join this guy's army. if that's a bit of a military metaphor, but I just felt really militant about it. And I kind of always, as a teenager, I always romanticized being part of a movement, an artistic movement, or some kind of revolution, or and this felt like the thing. This you
found your mission.
I found the mission.
Religious or military term, however you do it, but that's every startup, every movement has a mission.
Yeah,
and I'm still waiting for mine, but one day I'm so kind of not jealous, but it's great to hear that it does happen, and you get that moment.
Yeah,
you watch something, you don't know when it is, and so you decided to fix the education system, basically.
Well, yeah, I decided to see how you could get creativity into the education system. So that's how it started, and I started working then with schools. So I worked with Cornwall College. I did the PGCE, the beginnings of the PGCE. The trouble is that... And
sorry, for international listeners, the PGCE is what you do to become a teacher.
It's a postgrad in education. So it's a year's course to become a teacher. But it sparked depression, because I was just like, whoa, okay. And it was ridiculous, the stuff that they were getting teachers to do. And I'm just like, and I just kept arguing with the teacher all the time. And he was like, yes, I know it doesn't make sense, and I know it's pointless to do this, but you have to do this. And I'm like...
It's like being back at school again.
I was just like, he's serious? And he's like, yes, you've got to do this. And I'm like... that is not logical. And he's like, yes, but that's what we all have to do. And it made me so angry. I was like, I want to join the teaching union now. The teachers can't be being treated like this, because it's just treating teachers like kids, and like they don't have any common sense, and it just takes all the passion out of it. And he said, you've got to change the way you teach, or you need to leave the course. And so I was like, I think I better leave the course. So I managed to survive for about a third of it, which got me the PETALS qualification, so I could teach in the lifelong learning sector at the time. So I was teaching adults for Cornwall College for a while, and teaching them how to find their creativity and doing this 0.0 process. And then I got a grant from it was called Kernow Grant. So it's about Cornwall Education Grant. And I went around basically teaching in schools, so in primary schools at that stage, this 0.0 process, and allowing kids to have expression without product, without judgment. So the key part of this painting process, it's a meditative painting process, but the key part of it is that you don't have any judgment. No one's allowed to say whether it's good or bad. There's no appraisal at the end of it.
There's no right answer.
There's no right answer. So they can paint whatever they like. And it's amazing seeing that. And I mean, remember one kid, and the teachers are saying to me, oh, this kid, she's just really all sorts of problems, and she's really difficult, and but when she started painting, and I could see how she used to go up to the black, and she nearly went for the black, and then she didn't, and then one day she just went for the black, painted the whole page black, and then she painted this big grey square in it. and then this little white figure in the doorway, and then this sign across the top. It was like school. I mean, I didn't say anything, but because I wasn't allowed to make any comments. But I was like, yeah.
So a smug smile.
I was like, I know how you feel. It's like a big grey box, which is very kind of, So it was a fascinating journey doing that, and I really got some insights into seeing, what different schools were like. I travelled around teaching in lots of schools and I taught in some secondaries. And then we moved to Cambridge, basically because my daughter came out of, when she went into secondary, it was a disaster, and my eldest daughter, and the behaviour management, just the state that the school was in. It was state school in Cornwall, and there was no other choice. And the bullying was terrible. There was 18-year-olds in there with 11-year-olds, and there was a scrum in the corridors at every break. They the year sevens had to hold each other's hands to get through. And it's not that every school is bad, but I was just shocked to see how she changed from this really sweet.
Sure.
And state primaries were amazing, and she had a lovely time at the primary. And going into that secondary is such a massive transition, because suddenly you've got 1,500 kids and 18-year-olds as well, when you're this little...
All going through what they're going through.
Yeah, going through their difficulty,
and
and all in this same space. And she just was not ready for that at all. And she just changed. She started smashing up the house, like kicking things and like dealing with anger. And I just took her out. And I was like, I'm going to homeschool you.
Yeah.
Because it's just not okay. You don't seem okay. And so that was a big pointer too, in seeing where the issues lie, and also understanding that you can do it your own way and do it a different way. And so we did that for a year, but she wanted to go back to school. She did a lot of filmmaking, and we did a lot of fun things. Interestingly, that's what she does now, is a lot of the stuff we did in that year.
Yeah.
But it gave her that confidence to want to go back to school. So we moved to Cambridge to find schools, basically, and there's a lot of choice here. But it's interesting just how far you can go, and to try and find the right thing for your kids. And the same thing then happened to my younger daughter here, because she's got dyslexia and other SEND needs, and she just was, because you don't get the top grade in your SATs, that then sets you in year 6. That then sets you into bottom sets in secondary, and then their aspirations are you can get two grades above your grade. So if you're at 2, then if you get to 4 and 5, then that's progress. So that's all the vision for you is. And the top teachers tend to go into the top sets. The best teachers tend to go to top sets. I mean, it's not always the case, but they really focus on making sure that for a school they need to get the grades. The government's put so much pressure. And again, I don't want to bash schools or teachers, because I think schools are working really hard in difficult circumstances, and I think teachers are, again, working really hard in difficult circumstances.
It's tempting to do so, or whether it's doctors, nurses, teachers, it's the institutional framework that traps them into it straitjackets them. So even let's say the Department of Education could have 20 really amazing civil servants who've identified a problem, they want to solve it, but the institutional inertia and friction that they will face internally to try and make change in this big department and will be too much for them. And so it's trying to create, this is where there's always a radical tinge to this podcast, because the temptation is you can't really work with the system because the system is so flawed that you've got to try and either just do something completely different, start with a blank sheet of paper, or kind of just tear it down. And it's never the fault of the people in there, because I'm sure there's bad teachers out there, but it's in creating the system where they can be what they can be is what I guess you're trying to do. to some extent.
Yeah. So there's the kind of various stages a bit later in terms of actually working within the system and seeing what works and what doesn't, because there's definitely things that work. There was no kind of sort of somebody with malicious intent designing this. Everybody that designed what we have was trying to do the best thing and trying to make it the best it could be. And it's just that some of those things haven't worked. And it's about being able to make that change. But it's really hard to then change, because what do you change it to without knowing that that's then going to cause? You don't always know how things work together down the line and what consequences are going to happen because you've made that decision.
There's an incumbency bias. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I think that's true. And I think one of the big issues is what is having education and as part of politics, because if you don't have accountability after 4 years, you have an election and you get a new set of people in, and then everything has to change. So I think that's a massive problem, and that you're wanting to have the best results and for it to look good, so you can then sort of gloss over and just have the surface look amazing while you're in your 4 years. And you don't have to worry too much about the consequences of those choices you've made, as long as the statistics look good. But within those statistics are human beings, and I think governments sort of forget the humanity behind the statistics. And so, yes, A-level and GCSE results may have gone up, but mental health statistics have gone massively down, and that's not okay.
But also the ability for people to read, write functionally, to know about history, to do their basic mathematics is all at the same time as these. Every government's been juicing the numbers to kind of so that they can say that it's got better, and this is in other departments too. But we see this sort of reversal trend of the reality versus the numbers in terms of happiness and well-being, as you say, and confidence. But also, just you talk to university professors, and they said, well, people are turning up to university unable to write or unable to kind of structure, think critically,
think independently. If you've been spoon-fed, I mean, the way that we've created this exam, like teaching to the test system with this standardised test system, it's like, as Ken Robinson says, it's like this protracted university entrance. So it's all about these grades, and schools are judged. The league tables thing is an appalling decision to put schools it's maybe sounded good, like let's pit schools against each other and see who gets the best grade so parents can make an informed decision. But actually what you're doing is focusing the value on the grade. And this school's value is in its grade. And then you bring in Ofsted that can say, oh, this school's needs improvement, just on one sentence, which was, again, a shocking thing to do with the whole group of teachers and student leadership. And there's a whole community there of people working. I won't say working their asses off, but I'm not allowed to say that. But I mean, working really hard, and then you can just come along and say, oh, it needs improvement. It's like, how dare you? It's shocking that. And I know that that's one thing that...
And the behaviours it creates as well. I mean, it's that whole good heart's law, and if you're familiar with that, where, if you create a reward system, it'll change the behaviours. So like this dog, saw a child drowning, so it went in and rescued the child, and it got loads of sweets and chocolate, or dog treats, and it started just hanging around the pond knocking kids in, because it would therefore, and I don't think people realise how manifest this has happened, how strongly this has impacted the education system. Our neighbour, their daughter just finished her A-levels, does some babysitting for us, and she says she's basically spent the last 2 years just doing mocks for the whole year. Literally, you do sort of 70% of your time is just doing practicing of the A-level exam rather than learning anything. And
but that's because that's what the value is. The value is just in that grade. So schools need to do everything they can to get kids that grade. And so, and kids are partly because the schools are judged on it. I mean, obviously they're not just doing that because they obviously want to help kids get onto whatever they want to do in the future. But their school is getting its funding and getting its parents in because of those grades. So obviously it doesn't want kids that aren't going to get those grades to sit the exam. It doesn't want those kids that aren't. It wants kids that are going to get those grades for them. So the kids are getting the grades for the school in a way, and for the government, not for themselves. I mean, it is a bit for themselves if they, because that's how the system works, and it's easier for a university to look at an algorithm of grades and just go, oh yeah, we'll have the 3 A stars.
Are we all to some extent to blame though? Like, we define education as what job will it get us? I mean, another extreme example. A friend of a friend of a friend, chose a nursery for their kids because it had the highest Oxbridge acceptance rate from 4 to 18, and we want, what's the earning potential if we do this A level versus that A level, and what's the job, and we're trying to optimize for employability rather than optimize for decision making or well-being, whatever it is, to be a functioning human.
That's sort of parent fear, but the irony is that actually schools not preparing students. There's a massive skills crisis. Along with the mental health crisis, there is a skills shortage. Yeah. And it was interesting because I was at a conference the other day, and there was a Labour MP talking about how they were going to make the changes, and there's this massive skills crisis. And I'm like, well, you don't value skills in school. You're valuing academic memory. Yeah. You're doing memory tests. And I mean, that's a skill, okay, but it's just one skill. You're only really looking at this one skill, or it's a very narrow set of skills that work towards standardised tests. And I kind of look at, most kids don't remember after the GCSE. I mean, most adults don't remember all the stuff you learn about photosynthesis and how to label diagrams. And it's information that we're stressing teenagers out to remember, when that memory, one, we live in a digital age where you've got a phone which has got all that information on it anyway, you just Google it. But two, surely it's better to expose them to that information so they've been exposed to it, but we'll actually teach them the skills how to process information. So the skills that you do need in jobs like critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork or collaboration, leadership, just having a positive attitude and being confident, and IT skills. These aren't the skills that, I mean, they're being taught in school, but they're not focused on those. You know what I mean? They're not.
And they're taught as a lesson, not as a skill. Yeah.
So that's the main thing that we've done, is the curriculum that we're building is skills based, because that's kind of the future. That's the vision for the future.
So let's take a step back. We building. So what you watched this this talk. You moved to Cambridge. You did your PGCE, or tried to. You got a third way through. What was the next part of that journey?
Next stage. So when I came to Cambridge, I started I was still working in schools and teaching art, doing sort of arts weeks, and I did a lot of after school clubs. So I realised I could give creativity in after schools and holiday programmes and stuff like that. So I was running that with local schools, and I then went to live in India. So we lived in Bangalore, and I started teaching with the Whitefield Rising group that go into government schools, and they were helping teach kids. So it was a volunteer group, and they had no arts program at all in the schools. It was literally, it was amazing because the kids were so enthusiastic. That was what's beautiful. The kids couldn't wait. They're like, "Yay!" It's like, and every time I came in, it was amazing. The reactions, like "Morning, Mum." It was so nice to to see the positivity of schools, of kids wanting to be at school and wanting to learn. But they hadn't got any arts programs or drama or music, or it was languages. It was proper kind of languages, maths, languages, and essentially science. Yeah. But so bringing arts to that to them was amazing, and so I built a little sort of teacher training program, and helped support local teachers that were all doing this, volunteers, and I built them a little curriculum for arts and how to bring art into the classroom. And then while there I visited Bali and saw Green School, and friends of mine had their kids in Green School, and I was like, wow, these kids are really confident. And these are kids from all over the world. And yes, it's an amazing private school.
So what do you mean by green school?
It's called the Green School.
Okay.
And it's all built out of bamboo in the jungle. I mean, it's green in some ways. It's not green in the fact that people fly all over from all over the world to go to it. And it's quite expensive, but it was amazing to see really confident kids learning about sustainability and independence and doing, projects. And they were building companies, these kids, aged, this two sisters aged sort of 10 and 12 had changed the policy in Bali on plastic bags. They'd gone to try and meet with the Prime Minister, and he said, no. And they're like, well, how do we meet with you? And they're like, you'd need 10,000 signatures on a thing, and I think something like that. And they went and sat in the airport, got all those signatures, and then he was like, okay, you had to see that. and then he changed the policy and stopped plastic bags. And I'm like, that was kids did that. Mm-hmm. And they then went on to do TED Talks, and I'm just like, wow, okay, this is what you can do in a private school, but some of this surely we could bring into the state sector and spread this sort of level of confidence. And I thought maybe we need to build a green school and have a kind of model school in the UK. That was the vision that I got. So then I came back and I did the PGC again at Cambridge.
Second time lucky.
And as I live right next to I literally live next to Homerton, where they have the PGC course here. And I thought it'd be interesting doing it at Cambridge. It's quite an academic course, and you did a lot of research. And so I just interviewed everybody and spoke to everyone, and I got to work in lots of local state secondary schools, and that was amazing. And speaking to all the teachers, and it's like, what works and what doesn't work. And so it's proper kind of research time. And I was blown away that there are 100 years worth at least of educational research that's not currently going on in schools. And that's massively changed too. Even like now, it's constantly updating this research, particularly in neuroscience and teenage neuroscience. And it's not really in schools. And like you were talking about the carrot and stick thing, about motivation and whether it's the grade you're motivated by or the learning that you're
the intrinsic value.
The intrinsic value, yeah, exactly. And a lot of that's not implemented in schools. And there seems to be a massive mismatch between what's going on and what the researchers...
So there's a big lag effect between schools, from my understanding, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, were perhaps cynically created to get kids out of the way whilst the parents went to the factory. And then the factory model was kind of what was copied. So you clock in, you clock out, there's a bell, you sit, and you do the factory work or the clerical work, whatever it is, and then you're out. And that's still, obviously there's been some improvement since then, but the lag between what you said, 100 years worth of kind of educational research is still waiting to be sort of filtered through to the day-to-day reality or practices.
Yeah, it's really frustrating to see that. And then particularly there was like these books about even like homework and whether that's of value, and the idea that you're meant to take work home and whether you should have time off, particularly as a child, to when you're meant to get to play and learn through play.
Free learn,
and also Sarah Jane Blakemore's research into teenage the neuroscience of teenagers, and how actually at that kind of critical GCSE age of 15, 16, their main focus is on their social standing and how they fit within a group, and that moving away from your parents and that sense of belonging to something new and finding out who you are, and to put huge amounts of pressure and stress on kids at that age to learn and to do all these exams. I mean, they're having to sit hours and hours of exams. There's some ridiculous amount of exams because each subject's got about 3 exams, and you're just like, why are we doing this? And
because it's easy to measure, I guess.
It's easy to measure, and that's the brilliant book that in Cambridge they got us to read was Education in the Age of Measurement by Gert Biester, and his main point in that is that we are measuring what's easy to measure. And so we're valuing what's easy to measure rather than valuing what's of value, because that's a bit harder. So can we value, can we test for creativity? Well, it's a little hard. Can we test for teamwork? And how do we put that in a test? And it's interesting because Ken Baker did create the GCSEs. I was the first year to do GCSEs.
Who's Ken Baker? Sorry.
He was the education secretary back in, I think it was Margaret Thatcher's government.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, and he created GCSEs. And because we used to have O levels, and his vision was that we should have more coursework, and that it shouldn't all be based on an exam. And so when I went in to do my exams, my GCSEs, I'd already done half of them because I was able to put forward my best essay in the 2 years. But what's happened in that time since the 80s, since GCSEs were invented, they've decided that coursework was too easy to fake, or that it wasn't secure enough.
And the teachers were probably
and
gaming
the teachers
it as
were
well.
helping too much and all of this stuff. And I'm like, because it's such a competitive model that you've created. The more competitive you make this model, the less you're going to trust everybody to fit it. Everyone's going to try and cheat the system. So the big issue about coursework is this problem with cheating. So I think we need to just change the framework on that concept of cheating. And there's a research done that we got taught at Cambridge, which was all about it was a Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, and I actually really liked it because it's all about what somebody can do in the presence of others, with more advanced people, with more not advanced people, but do you know what I mean? The more, what's the word? Masters. So it's the apprenticeship model, where when Leonardo was working, he was painting on Verrocchio's paintings and actually doing it with Verrocchio. He wasn't. That's how he learned, by doing it with somebody that was better than him, until the point where he got better than Verrocchio. And Verrocchio was like, I don't want you painting on my paintings anymore because your bits are better than mine. You can go find your own studio. And I love that model of apprenticeship. And I think modelling behaviour works really well. And the research suggests that modelling is how kids learn, and through watching and trying it. And if you've got someone that's really good doing that with you, next to you. So the idea that to measure somebody, it has to be them sitting alone and what they can do by themselves in a test is what's of most value, is a very different idea to what they can do in a group of people and with people that are better than them, and as an apprentice.
This happens in nature, doesn't it? Apparently, if you put a horse with slower horses, its max speed will be kind of tracked to the slower, and if you put it with faster horses, its max speed kind of goes up. And I mean, I read somewhere that kind of aristocrats had figured this out over hundreds of years, that the best way to educate your child is to have a tutor, kind of one-on-one, which is sadly not in reach for most of us, or not very scalable. But having, you can skip through the whole educational stages that have been mapped out by the national curriculum by having someone sort of sit with you. And I, similar to you, I've struggled with school as well, and struggled to listen in a classroom setting, but was intuitively interested in things. And the moment a teacher went, look, come on, just come and sit with me, let's go through this. And I would get it because I can talk through it with them. And they would like, oh, that is actually A, really interesting, B, not that tricky. I just had to change the way the delivery mechanism had to change. And we can talk about maybe now's a good time to talk about AI perhaps, but there's supposedly software out there now that can do that kind of tuition element, where it can kind of pace the level of increments depending on the responses that the student has given to the. Are you aware of that? Are you suspicious of it?
I think technology is going to transform education. I'm not worried.
Yeah, it's an opportunity.
I think it's a massive opportunity. It's a brilliant tool. Yeah. I mean, every tool that we've had, I think humans are ingenious, and I don't hold this sort of constant idea that we need to be afraid all the time of everything. difficult things, do happen. But
Yeah.
we're very ingenious, and we come up with all sorts of solutions for stuff. And I think that there's all sorts of reasons to be positive about the tools that we're coming up with. And yes, we need to be aware of dangers, and there are obviously dangers and things that could make things worse. And technology has us all working at home and working everywhere, and that we have no time off, and emails, everything is so easy, and communication is so easy. We're just constantly doing it all the time, and it's overwhelming. And I think a lot of the mental health, particularly in young girls even, is around social media. And I think making phones addictive is a really, really worrying thing. And but it's not that the phone is a bad piece of technology. It's just the sort of capitalist drive behind,
and the availability and abundance of it.
Yeah, but, it's just frustrating. It's always capitalism in the way that capitalism is good in some senses, but it's just the drive for profits over humanity, and it's a bit of a problem. It's like the drive for statistics over well-being. We need to just shift that focus if we really want to do well and survive well on this planet, I think. And so it's about valuing, introducing a different set of values. And so, that's, again, what we're trying to do.
But that's exactly, because if you can change the educational model whereby you're not spending all day learning to the test, but you're spending all day kind of learning to think and express yourself and learn skills, be better at solving problems, you'll be better placed to use the technology as a force for good rather than let it use you.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Da Vinci and the fact that he honed his craft through having a master, the zone of proximal development. Apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Tell us about Da Vinci life skills. Actually, tell us about Da Vinci a bit more. Why did you pick him as the sort of beyond that example that you gave? What is it about him that people should know more of?
I love Da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was a polymath, and I love the polymath view of the world. I love the fact that you don't have to stay within one framework, like this choice whether you be a scientist or an artist. Or he was a scientist and an artist, and a geographer and a map maker and a designer. He did, and apparently a good chef and a good dancer. And why do we have to define ourselves and narrow ourselves? And I think that's another issue with our curriculum, is in siloing all the subjects, you're keeping them in a very tight boundaries, and so you can't just jump between them. And what I love about that whole sort of Renaissance thinking was that you could be doing scientific research one moment and then drawing and painting the next, and it was about just being interested in the world and being curious. And I think something you can say about Leonardo is he was insatiably curious about the world, and surely we want that for our kids.
There's two levels. I mean, I remember reading his notebooks ages ago, and one page he's talking about if you prod a frog in this nerve, it'll kind of die, but if you prod this frog, in that way it can live on. And then the next moment he's talking about, how sight changes the older you get, and then it's just it's so varied. As you say, he's insatiably curious, and this false dichotomy between art and science, or creativity and science, all the science is in itself inherently a creative thing, and you need to be able to draw on the humanities, or draw on the ability to kind of spot adjacencies and do this kind of convergent thinking. As science has become this very rational logical thing, whereas previously all the best scientists 150 years ago used to be philosophers at the same time.
Exactly.
And why have we made science a non-creative thing, and why have we made creativity a non-scientific thing? I don't know.
You mentioned Ian McGilchrist before.
Yes.
He describes that pretty well in his book, and it's it's just having a left dominant brain in terms of, and I know that that's controversial, and he's pushing boundaries, but there are differences between the hemispheres in our brain, and his sort of hypothesis is that the right hemisphere needs to be the master and the left hemisphere is the servant, but the servant's taken over and is running things. And what the left hemisphere is very good at doing is it's a center for language, and it's very good at categorizing and separating, and it creates individual things and separate things, whereas the right hemisphere is about big picture thinking and systems thinking, and can see everything, but doesn't have that language. And you need both, obviously. But it's just, I mean, his sort of vision for the future, which is why he was keen on our project.
Yeah, well, it's through his work that I came across you, so thank you, Dr. McGilchrist.
Yeah, he's amazing, and he was very positive about what we're doing, because it's this idea of allowing that right hemisphere and that systems thinking and that connectivity to be the main thing. And then, so it's then really helpful to categorize. It's really helpful to then separate things out and use one's left hemisphere to look at the bigger picture, to help you identify things within the bigger picture.
Yeah, but you need the insight first before you can then categorize.
You need both.
I remember reading James Dyson's biography. I don't know if you've read autobiography, and he's very, very strongly worded about the education system in the UK. And you're a bit thick, you do woodwork, you're good at drawing, you do art, you've got glasses on so you can do maths, and it's sort of just this desire to just stick people in a box as early as possible, and then not let that box talk to the other box is part of the reason why we don't have any risk taking or imagination. So you've used Da Vinci as your kind of role model to name your kind of next project. So what is Da Vinci Life Skills? So
we kind of created two things. We started with Da Vinci curriculum because when I came back from green school, I was like, okay, I want to set up this green school. And so I'd worked in the state sector for a bit, and I'd done my year of training in a school. And again, as I said, I'd done all this research, and I'd asked all the kids, if you could change the system, what would you change and what would you keep? Because school, as I said, does amazing things. So it's like, what's really good and what isn't. And so then it was like, okay, maybe I apologized to them and said, I will leave and I will do the best I can. I promise you, I'll do all I can.
No pressure.
To make this system better. And it was hard to leave, actually, because I just really get connected with young people. But what I thought would work best would be to create a kind of lighthouse school. And so I met with Zach, who I'd met in Bali, and he had a vision. He'd worked at Green School, and he's an English teacher, and he had a vision for using role-play games and Dungeons and Dragons to teach the curriculum through, and to particularly teach skills through. And he had a whole system of skills-based learning through role-play within gaming, which it was amazing. Yeah. And the kids were very engaged and learning a lot about creative writing within that, and but a whole load of skills, not just creative writing. And I also met with Farhan, who through Learn Life, because he'd been working with Learn Life, and we'd looked at maybe setting up a Learn Life hub. And so I've looked at both these kind of franchises of Green School and Learn Life, and like maybe we could work with them. And there were just various issues of reasons why that neither of that was going to work for us. So we're like, why don't we just set it up? Because neither of them had the curriculum. And I just thought, if we're trying to do something in the UK, Ofsted's never going to accept us not having a curriculum.
Yeah. So you've got this
for one
straitjacket already somewhat by having to have a standardised approach. But is that good in a way?
But yes, and what when speaking to students and teachers within like in Green School, there was a lot of comment about the lack of curriculum. They were doing a lot of project-based learning, but the teachers would bring the projects. And so each project was amazing, but no one had an idea, if you had a new teacher, what they'd done before and there wasn't a roadmap for learning, so you couldn't build on what had been done before. And the great thing about a curriculum is saying, okay, so now we've learnt this, we can now learn this, and then you can build. And that was what has been lacking, I think, in a lot of the schools and progressive sort of education and alternative education that we looked at. So we did a ton of research, and then went and met with professors, and we sort of gathered a whole group of experts in this field and said, how could we do this better? And sort of and the next iteration, and take on board what we've learnt from what we're doing now, what's done with Steiner and Montessori and all these other schools. And it's like, well, how can we do the best thing?
Yeah.
And so we came up with two things. One, the curriculum, which was called the Da Vinci Life Skills Curriculum, and a pedagogy, which is called Biophilic Education. And the pedagogy was really a values shift. So pedagogy meaning like sort of the philosophy of how you're teaching. And that was kind of the idea of making a movement, because there's a movement in design called biophilic design in architecture. And I was teaching...
Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, I've been teaching DT. So DT was my subject in school, and art. So I was teaching design technology and art. And I'd been teaching biophilic architecture. Biophilia means the love of life. And there is a new science, which essentially they've done research into what is the best human habitat, and what are the places that humans thrive in, and mainly in office spaces, because they're looking at productivity. Yeah. So that research has been done in office spaces. And so it's like, how do we get the most out of people? And also in hospitals and schools and things. But they've been looking at what do humans need in a space, things like daylight, just being able to have access to the weather and knowing what's going on, access. Sorry.
That's all right.
We have a lot of planes. Do you want me to wait? Apparently we like parts of hulls, segments of hulls. We like symmetry. We like natural elements. We like natural materials. Yeah. We like to have a sanctuary space, like a cave, but we also like to have vistas and a view to see what's coming. And there's all these things that human beings, have a need for within a space. And if you design your spaces like that, and also somewhere that's exhilarating and exciting to be in, the productivity actually does change, and people's well-being and cognitive abilities change within those spaces.
Because we like kind of angles, don't we? Like multiple. The problem with most walls is it's just 4 angles, right? Whereas if you put a hedge in front of it, you've got all these little intricacies that kind of just trap your eyes for a few moments, that kind of capture. Whereas this is kind of a plain Euclidean facade, for want of a better term,
white box
is what everything is. Yeah, white box, which is what classrooms look like, hospital rooms look like. Most office cubicles are cubicles for that reason, kind of 4-sided boxes. And so there's this. Is it like, I hate to say more productive, like we're using this thing to juice out 8% more increment from our workers type thing? But what you're not saying that, I know.
No, we're not saying that, but
it just enables you to kind of be more have greater well-being.
But the research shows that it increases well-being and cognitive ability. And I mean, if you want a school, but surely those are good things to have within a school. I mean, it's as you say, it's organic shapes, and actually apparently moving things make a difference too. But the key for us was the name of biophilic design, and I just thought, passionate love of life. That sounds like a really good name for an education system. Yeah. And why don't we have a biophilic education system where people can thrive, and the focus is on what does our species need to thrive. And when you do design, and so like doing design GCSE, which I was teaching, design and technology GCSE and A-level, a big part of that is having a design brief, and you go back to a design brief at the beginning, and you have to make that as kind of broad as possible to stop design fixation. Yeah. So if you think about education as like, how do we want to educate our species, this species of ape that we are, and what are the things that we actually want as an outcome from this, to be able to create design criteria for this system. So we went right back to the beginning in that concept. And so this is why biophilia sounded a really good thing, because it's like, well, the idea that somebody could thrive, definitely. And what is it that human beings need, and how are we different from robots and AI and what makes us human.
Yeah.
And that was the big part of biophilic education concept of this pedagogy. It's like, well, things like belonging and expression, resilience, the ability to get back up after having failed and keep going and to learn from mistakes. So much of what isn't AI and isn't a computer, sense of having a cultural identity, belonging to a place and having that history. And and I think a lot of that is community, and AI doesn't necessarily need community and all of these things, and imagination or curiosity or these are really human traits. And so we like, why don't we focus on those and build confidence in those things, and then also respond to what the government is lacking, which is skills, and then this mental health crisis. So with the two crises, the skills crisis and mental health crisis, what if we could respond to those and meet those needs, and introduce project-based learning, which is what's already happening in DT and art anyway. And I found that within school, the DT departments are being shut down in a lot of schools or reduced. Another thing that Ken Baker now is working in the House of Lords trying to rectify, because he's like, we should be actually focusing on design technology. It surely is an important thing in our world, so there's a subject. And I personally believe it could be the heart of the school rather than this. It's currently the most expensive department in a school because it has wood workshops, sewing workshops.
Space. It takes up a lot of
space. It takes up a lot of space. They have cooking. Cooking is part of it. So nutrition, they have all the kitchens. And it's a massive subject because you're looking at materials and material properties of everything from plastics and wood and metal, but where they're sourced. So you're looking at the geography of where they're sourced and the sustainability issues around that, and the people and species within those processes, and the ethics behind that too. And then you're looking at the manufacturing processes. You're looking. It's this is the noisiest interview you've ever done.
Fine. It's good. It's good skills testing for me. Keep my train of thought.
Sorry, it got noisier and noisier as we've been going on. So DT encompasses so much, as well as then just like understanding inclusivity in design and sustainability within design, but then also looking at the end of life and circular economies, and it's a huge subject, and it can incorporate geography and science and history and when you include food in it too, there's tons of chemistry and biology within the food program, so why is this subject not? I think it's a bit lost because it doesn't know where its boundaries are, and I think it could, instead of being this thing that nobody quite knows what to do with, and it has a GCSE that hasn't got much value because nobody in university is looking for this degree in, like a GCSE or an A-level in DT. And so I would suggest scrapping the design technology, a bit controversial, but GCSE, and instead having some project-based learning qualifications, which are more skills-based. If the DT department became the applied learning department within the school, and the place where you take all of that academic learning and build things and make things with it, and become a place where all the departments can connect and be polymaths and actually bring those bits of knowledge together. So bring some of that geography and that science and art all together, and to create things and to do real world projects. This is a kind of the vision that we had. And so what we created, separate from the pedagogy, so we have our first company is called Biophilic Education Alliance. And that company is basically focusing on teacher training. So it's helping support teachers, because again, through this journey, we learnt that one of the biggest challenges in this is training teachers, and teachers are, I don't need more things to have to learn and change, because they're constantly being told you've got to change and do this. But actually finding teachers that are able to sort of traverse and think like a DT teacher is harder, because they're also trained to do their particular thing, and it's hard enough with the amount of work and the amount of information that they've got to get these kids passing these tests.
6 wives of Henry VIII to get through before you can think about DT.
It's so much information. So teacher training, and also the training in terms of the values shift. So it's really kind of CPD, which is continual professional development, kind of enabling teachers to make this move to a slightly different curriculum. So that's one thing. So that's what we call it BEAL. So Biophilic Education is sort of reduced to B, which kind of is nice. And then we created the Da Vinci Life Skills curriculum as our response to how to create a more biophilic education system. So what we are opening to the world essentially is to say, everyone can come up with their idea of how education could be more biophilic, and it would be nice that biophilic education would be a movement and a term that we could coin and use as a movement to change education, and that the Da Vinci Life Skills curriculum is just one way of doing that. We're not saying it's the only way. And what we've basically built is 5 pathways of project-based learning. We mapped the whole of the UK national curriculum. We kind of decided that there was it's basically a huge compendium of interesting things. And there's a lot of cultural capital for living in our society, certainly in the West, within it. It's quite biased, yes. And I mean, it's British, so it's like, but there's other things that you can add to it, certainly. But we used it as a basic framework. Things we've changed, we have focused more on global history and ancient civilizations rather than British history. And some of the science, we've not focused so much on the knowledge within science, because of the curriculum that we're building is more focused on how to be a scientist rather than can you remember how to label all the bones in a human body and what they're all called type of thing. It's like, can you draw a cell and label all the parts of the cell? It's like, why do we need to remember the parts of a cell? Surely if you get given a page of information about a cell and get given a photograph of a cell and say, can you draw a diagram from the information you've been given, is more useful as a skill. Can you source the correct and relevant bits of information and use that to build a simple diagram that's easy to see? So the drawing skills and the critical thinking skills are more valuable. So some of the knowledge is looked at in less depth, because we're not trying to get kids to remember the knowledge as much. The idea and what the research shows is that people learn things better through stories and through doing, and when you do things with your whole body, or you apply that knowledge to something rather than just dry academic knowledge. It's actually one of the hardest skills for a human to do, is to memorize things, just dry facts. It's really hard. We love stories, so we all remember stories, and we remember things through music and stuff like that. But if memory's not the key important thing,
it's just amazing listening to you. Just like, how is this still a thing that you have to rote learn, shove things in your short-term memory, leading up to a kind of, just as the weather starts getting better, And my birthday's in May, so I always had exams on my birthday, and I also slightly resented that too. But it just all makes complete sense. And what's the kind of, sorry, unless I've cut you off there, so if there's anything else, sorry, you carry on.
No, that's okay. So our 5 pathways, just to what we've sort of boiled it down to, having looked at all of the sort of mapping the curriculum, particularly in secondary, so particularly in Key Stage 3, which is aged 11 to like 14, and Key Stage 4, which is the GCSE years, which is 16, sort of 14 to 16. That's the main area that we just felt that the problem lies. And so our big focus is in that area, because primary is pretty good. I mean, basic things you need to know in primary one is there should be a bit more play for sure, and drama should be a big part of it, because learning through play and role play is huge, but also learning how to read and write and do basic maths.
Sure.
And how to get on with other people. It's kind of done, and primary schools are pretty good as a whole. I mean, the whole thing when you get to SATs in year 6 is maybe, and the focus in on English and maths being the only important things. We could shift the balance a little bit, but essentially it's when you get to secondary that the problems, I think, really lie in terms of what's valued. And so yeah, our 5 pathways, we have food. So we separated DT out and made food separate, and food now we've built these projects. So each project is about 54 hours of learning, and the idea is that you can do these within a semester. So you can do if you split the year into 2, for example, and have semester 1, semester 2, and have 2 18-week semesters, that you could do 2 projects in those times. Well, actually we're doing 3 projects within those times, but you can take our curriculum and our projects and add it to the normal curriculum now in a subject like DT, or you could take out art, you could take out some of the subjects that are currently there and use it as a hybrid model.
Right.
And we've then been testing it in schools where they're doing it as a full curriculum as well. So
so it's being utilised right now.
Yes.
So just before I ask you how any sneak peek on the kind of the responsiveness of those tests, but so the 5 pathways, food. So
food is one, but food's really essential because it's like growing food is like an essential skill, right? So knowing but all the biology that's in photosynthesis and understanding soil and testing soil and water and understanding climate and what you can grow, what can you grow locally, understanding the sustainability and ethics behind food, supply chains, waste, everything. It's so much. It's exactly that. And then the chemistry of actual, even within cooking, and understanding chemical changes within heat exchange and energy exchange and in nutrition in the body. And there's just tons of science and every subject within food design. And then you've got customer service, and we do cafe design, and we look at fermentation and preservation of food. We look at diets and just so many things that were within that project, that you've got so many interesting projects to come out of that. And also actually we've got one on snack design, so looking at the industry of food and how sales of food and things like that. And then we have the other side of DT, which is enterprise, which is more product design, interior design. We do biomimicry product design project. We've got an biophilic interior design and architecture project. We've got robotic arms looking at engineering and mechanics. We're looking, we're teaching actually in my school right now that in September is the future of transport. So looking at the issues around the history of transport, and then the current issues around fossil fuels, and then the future of what transport might be. In terms of like taxis and flying things, and so that they've just done a project where they all built a company, a social enterprise company, the students, and they did all of the company finance, and they did an investor pitch. We did a Dragon's Den with all the parents, and again, so that's bringing in loads of physics, maths, sort of finance, and then we have a production pathway where the students put on an event, and that can be all sorts of things. So we've got one where they do a stop frame alien animation film, learning about species on this planet and how you might design an alien planet and an alien species that's authentic. And then we have a documentary on the ceremonies and celebrations and rites of passage around the world. And we've got a design museum on the human body using interactive technology, so using like plumbing to look at the heart system and using electrics to look at the nervous system and things like that. So learning biology as well as sort of home and there's mechanics.
That kind of production or kind of final turning up on the day element captures probably 100 or 150% of the benefits of an exam. There is a benefit to having to like wake up in the morning, make sure you've got your calculator, you've got your pencil and it's sharp, and you turn up and you've got to be focused and do your 3 hours and plan, and there's something to that.
Yes.
That is required in the real world, but actually you're capturing the benefits of that through a more practical, more realistic representation of how the real world works, rather than sitting in a room in silence for 3 hours.
Yes. I mean, we suggest you might as well do a maths exam, because maths is really easy to test whether you know it or not in an exam. So things that you can test like that, why don't you do an exam? Because then you can keep this. There is a sense of fairness, of understanding. I mean, what we suggested and what we've kind of lobbied for is a more music grade style. And this is what you can use technology for, because if you had a music grade where you get grade 1 maths or you get grade 1 geometry, go into a test, have a test centre in the online algorithmic test that you can do in a school, and say, okay, this month's exams, who's going to sit what? And everyone's like, I want to sit this and I want to sit that. If you fail it, it's an instant pass or fail, like a driving.
Yeah, it's binary.
And you pass it or fail it, and then okay, I've got geometry. I've got to level 3 in geometry, or I've got arithmetic level 5, and in music, level 5 is grade 5 is the same as a GCSE equivalent to, and grade 8 is equivalent to an A level. So it seems like a very sensible way of doing algorithmic testing and sort of individual knowledge testing, if that's what you want and that's what you value, which might be useful for some things, as you say. But then the rest of the learning could be evidence, which it currently can be done in art and DT through portfolios. So, and again, when you've got digital ability to do a digital portfolio, you can add film and audio and all sorts to it. So portfolios can evidence creativity and teamwork, and they're already doing that. So it's not like this new thing, because I was teaching DT and you do that for and art, and you do that, you build a portfolio in both those things already currently. And then there's also exam boards that have a project qualification, which they're currently offering too, and you're allowed at the moment to do one project qualification, which is called an EPQ at A level. It's worth half an A level, and an HPQ at GCSE, which is worth half a GCSE. And then there's an FPQ, which is more you can do in the foundation. It's called foundation project qualification, and that's you can do in Key Stage 3, so when you're a bit younger. And I mean that they already exist, all these things. So what we're suggesting is,
it's not something so radical.
It's not radical. It's just like, why don't we reduce GCSEs and that kind of testing and increase project qualifications?
Yeah. So it's being tested right now.
Yes. So we've got schools. We've been testing it the last 3 years, and 2 years sort of. We have school in Bali and a school in Bermuda. It's been easier to test it, and it wasn't necessarily that we chose that. It's just that Zach was working in Bali, so he.
So is it Hawaii next? Maybe?
Yeah, I know. Well, interestingly, I've got another in. Actually, there is a school in Hawaii that's set up. It just happens to be island states. It's not that I get to go and visit them all. But we've had a lot of global interest, and we have had a lot of interest in the UK. Even the Welsh government rang up and said, "Oh, your food programme sounds amazing," and just because they're very progressive in Wales, and more than England. And we've had state schools and private schools interested, and so we've done quite a bit of trialling of all of these different projects. And then eventually, 2 years ago, I set up my own little hub. So I have called a B Hub, and it's a 3-day-a-week home ed hub where I'm able to test and get feedback from students when we test these projects, and actually have found that there is a huge amount of people. The increase in home education is massive, particularly since COVID.
Yeah.
So another thing we're trying to now do is help support people to set up home ed hubs. And so if we can provide them with the curriculum and the teacher training, it's kind of creating lifeboats.
It's I mentioned to you before, my oldest is starting school in 2 weeks, and been talking to various parents, who I don't know very well, in the gym or whatever, wherever it is, you chat to people, and the amount of I've sort of, in passing kind of jokingly said, "Oh, do you know what? I'm just so tempted just to sort of find 6 parents and set up my own thing."
Yeah.
And every time I said that, they go, "Can you tell me if you actually do that?" And like, not realizing and there shows you there's some latent.
There's a lot of people doing it right now.
Okay,
there's people falling out of the system, left, right, etc. I mean, literally, we have so many calls from people that the kids are just like, my kid is just going through complete trauma and they can't cope at all. And I don't know if you watched Adolescence.
I didn't, not because I knew it became this sort of lightning rod culturally, which therefore put me off it. But I get the gist of it.
Yeah. Well, some of the school experiences I certainly recognise, and some experiences and this is certainly not the case in all state schools, secondary schools, but there's a slight feeling of that feeling that you imagine in prison. I'm very happy that I haven't experienced that, but that feeling you get when you watch prison things, of that feeling of unsafety, and it's like, how do I get through this without anyone really noticing me too much and survive my way through this? So it's about survival.
Yeah.
And
so you've got this permanent cortisol level of anxiety, flight or flight, because you're turning up going into the sort of the gauntlet.
Exactly.
And it's not really a conducive environment to learn.
Exactly. Both my children have experienced that and have told me profusely about feeling like that at school. And so many of the kids that I've been teaching now have told me about that experience of school, of just finding it incredibly stressful environment. And neuropsychology will tell you that that's not a good place to learn. You don't, if you're super stressed, you're not taking stuff in. You're not, I mean, you are taking stuff in the sense of how to survive and how to get through this, but not necessarily the information that schools will be hoping you're going to take in. And so what we're really driving for is that schools become places where we focus on well-being more than grades. That's the what I would like.
Can I trying to it all resonates with me, but I know that there's a constituency of people who will be saying this all sounds a bit fluffy.
Yeah.
There's a school I think it's in South East London. Catherine Burble Singh is that. I mean, this is the opposite take of it. Well, actually, what we need is not. We need to return to kind of traditional values of discipline and order and structure. And what the problem with education is that kids have been empowered too much to kind of, express, they don't know what's right for them. I'm putting words into people's mouths here, but and actually what we need is a bit of, not necessarily a ruler to the back of the hand, but a bit more like kids crave boundaries and discipline, because then it gives them a framework to therefore know what's acceptable, what's not, and then they can kind of learn, rather than being kind of given a free-for-all. How has that been a reaction that you've come across, or are you aware of that perspective? And is there something in there at least that kind of resonates, or is it complete tosh?
No, I agree. I don't agree with the Michaela School and quite how they go about it, but I don't agree with silent corridors and all of that sort of the draconian, the carrot and the stick. I don't think necessarily work. But I think, obviously it works to a degree, but the research shows, if you look at Daniel Pink's research, and have you seen his book? I mean, he's got a TED talk talking all about motivation and intrinsic motivation, and carrot and stick is not, it works in certain, it doesn't work creatively and if thinking laterally. It works if you've got a specific goal and to do a specific thing, but it shuts down creative thinking. So this is one of the issues with it. But if you've got a very specific linear task to do, like stack those boxes, you can do that more if you've got some, and I'll give you and you will do it quicker with a gun to your head, or if you get £10 or £100 reward for it, and I'll pay you more the more boxes you stack. That's fine. But then if you have to build a rocket ship out of it, or to do something creative, all the studies have shown that doesn't work, and the more money you pay someone, the less well they do. And the more the more motivation, or the more sort of intrinsic, or the more sort of external carrots, or
one of
the
work. Bits of research that resonates with that I heard this morning driving up here was they took I think 4 or 5 year olds who intrinsically liked the idea of drawing and would do it naturally anyway, and they gave them gold stars or sweets, whatever, the more they drew. And then what they found was that they were doing it for the reward, not the dopamine release came from the reward rather than from the actual drawing. So the kids who initially liked drawing were doing it, ended up not doing it because the rewards had to stack up and get bigger and bigger to kind of drive that behavior. And so it makes complete sense. And McGilchrist talks about that difference between convergent thinking and divergent thinking, where sort of convergent thinking is, there is a right answer, there is a set outcome, and you've got to kind of follow a sequential process to get to that right answer. That is kind of what a computer does, or what AI does, which is great.
Yeah.
And that's one element that we have to incorporate. But divergent thinking is where you've got a set of skills and then you've got a problem which doesn't have a definable outcome or has multiple right answers, and you have to spot adjacencies. You have to draw upon multiple fields of discipline to kind of get to a viable solution. And that type of thinking is what you're saying, it doesn't manifest itself in a hyper carrot and stick orderly environment. Is that a fair representation?
I definitely think that's the case. And we really want intrinsic motivation, and I think that's what, when you're teaching stuff, and a lot of kids say that school's boring, and kids love learning. It's like you're saying kids love drawing, but you start punishing them if they don't do it and giving them stars if they do it, then all the joy has gone up, because it's all about this star or this punishment, and that becomes the focus, not the drawing.
Okay, I had this question, this is a perfect time to ask it, kind of broader question.
Yeah.
Is laziness a thing? So something I'm grappling with at the moment is, I've been, if you read my school reports, it's always like, has potential but very lazy, doesn't apply to, and like, I'd want to do the work, I was interested in the stuff, but I just couldn't do the homework, or I couldn't. A day of like surviving socially and sat in the classroom and or like preparing for exams just was I just found it such a tax, even though I wanted to do it because it would impress my parents or whatever, it would make me feel good if I got a good grade. It wasn't enough, and so there's like, then my reaction to that is, well, the mechanism of delivery is wrong, and the system is wrong, and actually it's not me that's the problem. It's the laziness is a feature, not a bug. It's your body telling you this isn't right for you, you need to go and find something else that's better for you. But on the flip side, there is something in what David Goggins calls the suck, and doing something that you pointed to resilience earlier, like doing something that's not, to learn a skill, there's a bit, yes, I'm interested in this thing, but there comes a point where you're like, God, this is actually quite hard, and I actually do need to stick with it to actually climb that ladder of competence, and have endurance.
100%.
So at what point? So laziness is a thing, but evolutionarily doesn't make sense to me. Human beings, no creature is lazy, because you've got to survive, and being lazy means, there's a lion coming, can't be bothered, like I'll figure it out later, kind of thing. So is laziness a thing, and how do we come about it? How do we teach resilience without sucking the life out of something?
I
nice,
love that.
One.
That's easy for me, because I really love that. Because this is where I do agree with what you were talking about structure, and this is why I do agree with having a curriculum.
Okay.
Because laziness does exist, and I just, that ability to get up off the sofa, you're just like, I can't be bothered. Yeah. Why would I go through the struggle if I don't have to? And the reason you do is because actually the reward at the end, the more you struggle in life, it's a really annoying thing, but the more you struggle, the bigger the reward at the end of it. And to not have, because there's a whole movement in unschooling where they're just like allowing kids to just be completely free and do whatever they like, and within the homeschool movement this is quite big, and that may work for some kids, and there's an argument there that if you allow kids to do that for long enough, they find their own intrinsic motivation, and that they will then set themselves goals and do that. But I think that's really hard, and in my experience, not only with my own kids and students, but also just for myself, there's something working for yourself, and then there's also this feeling of having to do everything yourself as an entrepreneur or as doing startups, or having a boss that just tells you what to do and you don't have the responsibility. There's something really nice in having a boss that tells you what to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And then it's really nice to have autonomy at other times. And I think it's the balance of those two things. So what we're trying to do with our curriculum is have the framework, the scaffolding. And as you say, like, right, here is the thing you've got to do. It might be hard, it might be difficult, but this is the challenge we are setting you. See if you can do it.
Yeah.
But what we set within that is the choice, the student choice to go. And so, for example, if you're doing a stop frame alien animation film, we're going to look at species on Earth. What species do you want to look at? You choose. Do you want to go look at fungi, or do you want to go look at anything?
Rhinos.
Yeah, whales or dogs, or it might be, or plants, or strange plants. But you can then do that research. You choose, and then you teach the class what about that species. And if we learn as a group the criteria for life on Earth, so the scientific criteria for life, Mrs. Gren, part of the GCSE biology, then we can make sure that any alien we design, or how if we look at all the species on Earth, as many as we can, and we all teach each other what we've found, then it's giving the students that sense of like, well, I get to teach this, I get to choose. We've still got the framework, we're still learning the thing. Yeah. And then they're still building, and they get to design their own film, write their own script, but they're still having to learn how to do stop frame animation and how to edit a film, and that's hard.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I do know exactly. There's that kind of sense of you have to voluntarily take on a challenge. If someone pushes you into the swimming pool, or like someone forces you to do something, you might do it if it's guns ahead, but if it's not guns ahead, then it's. Whereas if you get a sense of agency within a structure, okay, I've got to choose fungus or fungi, right? So that's on me. Now I better actually see it through. Whereas if the teacher had gone, "You're going to do fungi," and you're like, "Well," you then start thinking, "Well, why do I have to do?" And then you kind of just put less into it. Whereas, but you do need both. You need that structure. So it's the balance. That makes a lot of sense because a lot of it is just then it's that intrinsic motivation is so important, and agency I guess helps writing up. I chose to do chemistry A level because I really liked my GCSE chemistry teacher, who I found I enjoyed the lessons, and I turned up and I wanted to do the homework and show the teacher that I got what they were saying and liked. But then I got to sixth form and I was like, I've got a different chemistry teacher who I don't like. Already in my mind I'm like, I don't like this teacher because it's not that one. And then the next 2 years became a drag because I didn't choose that subject for the right reason. I did it because of so hopefully like stripping away the need almost to have a good teacher. I know teachers are very important, and there's a lot of them there that are frustrated, but if you're doing it for the right reasons, then you're going to endure or be more resilient.
Although a good teacher in any subject will inspire people to do that. So it does make a massive difference, the teacher usually. But I mean, what we're trying to shift to is teachers becoming facilitators and learners. So the idea within our curriculum is that the teachers, yes, you're creating a safe space. So you build the sanctuary, create that sanctuary safe space where people can come in and explore, but you're exploring with them. So I don't necessarily need to know the whole history of transport as I go in to teach the transport. And I don't need to know the future of transport. And I don't necessarily need to everything about aerodynamics or engines. But by the end of the semester, I'll know a whole lot more. But that's because we're going to learn it together. And what I will model for the students is how to learn it. And in all the teaching resources that I'm building, that we are currently, this is what we're building, is teaching resources, essentially slide decks that teachers can use and schemes of work that they can use as this sort of platform for how you to deliver, how you can deliver it. And the idea is everything that we've made is editable, so teachers can adapt it to their style, adapt it to their context, and to their country. It needs to be adaptable, learning to your own specific needs and style. But I think I think what you'll find actually with what you're doing is the demand will be much greater because of this AI
opportunity, but also challenge, because I know what I would have been doing at school if I was given ChatGPT and I was asked to write an essay. I'd be learning lots of creative ways to make it the teachers think I wrote it, and that's good practice of creativity. But actually, what you've set out here is an antidote, or it's using the technology rather than like being eaten up by it, which I think I think the demand could be quite powerful. So, kind of what's next for the project for the Biophilic Alliance, and what's the rollout going to look like now that it's been tested?
I didn't tell you the last two pathways actually.
Let
me just quickly tell you that.
Please do, yeah, please do.
Because the games one which was inspired by Zach's work, is amazing. So that we have a multiverse games pathway which teaches the importance of learning through play, and we teach game design, game mechanics, and understanding the skills that we need in life. So it's looking at life skills and what life skills we learn and how we develop our brains through playing games, and why our ancestors evolved games in the first place. And so that's really interesting. And then looking at addiction and dopamine and the hormone responses to playing games, so the feedback loops, and how different game mechanics get you to want to do something again. And I think that's something too that they then can see within learning, that if you create little goals and then you meet those goals, it's like this little feedback loop of dopamine or serotonin that you're getting, and that keeps you wanting to do it, because that thing that was hard, you want to do it. And so our multiverse games pathway, we have sort of board game design, but also we do role play. So they build worlds. We do it in historical settings. So they go into ancient Greece, for example. They learn all they can. They all take on. We basically brainstorm everything that you could learn about ancient Greece, for example, like the gods, the currency, the philosophy, the schooling, the clothes, the architecture. They all go off and say, okay, I'll research architecture, and then they all do a presentation for their part. And then they design characters, authentic characters. When we did it, they designed their own island, and their own fantasy Greek island. Amazing. And learned all about structures and volcanoes and rivers and where settlements might be. And we built terrains. They did map making, and then they created their own stories, and they became game masters. So they learn how to run an improvised story with a group. And so they can form small groups of 4 or 5 students, and they each have they run these games and stories. So it's amazing, because you can go into any historical context. And again, we've looked at fantasy, and been looking at the spice trade in India and ancient China. So we've got all sorts of different places you can go within the games pathway. And the last one was it's called PEP, which is Personal Exploration Projects, and that is where the students choose. So we give them the framework of how to build a project, how to evidence all the work, and how to do your SMART targets, so your specific goals, your measurable goals. And I mean, they use that in business.
That's a skill in itself, setting a target.
Setting targets and meeting those, and having specific those goals, and knowing your strategy for getting to them. So we're teaching strategy, we're teaching and then being able to evaluate whether you've met those targets that you're setting, and they get to decide what project they're going to do. And we with the PET project, we give them a year to do that. So they have the semester 1, they explore as many different things as they're interested in, and then at the end they do a presentation and say, this is what I want to do as a project. And that's very similar to an HPQ and EPQ that currently exist. So we've now got to the point where we mapped basically 40 projects, the vision for 8 years, the idea that you do 5 projects in a year. So you can do PEP that runs through the year. First semester you do enterprise and production, and second semester you'd be continuing your PEP, and then you'd do multiverse games and food, for example, and that would fit into the curriculum. If you were going to do it as a hybrid in a state school alongside all the other learning, you might do less than that. Yeah. But essentially we do with about 3 hours of learning a week on we do it in a day. Actually, we do multiverse games day, and we have 3 hours within that day. We also do English lessons and maths lessons as well, and other skill up lessons. We call it skill up, where you're learning skills in specific subjects, because we've discovered that actually it's really nice to learn linearly as well.
Yeah.
For some things, like, okay, we're doing art, let's learn how to do, landscape drawing and learn perspective, for example. So we'll do an art skill up, or let's learn about maps and do geography skill up or something. And so when we do reading out loud and lots of other things, we mapped all of these projects, and we did a kind of overview scheme of work, so we could make sure that we're hitting all of the learning objectives in the national, well, not all of them, but as I said, but most of them in the national curriculum. And we've just now finished the first year of projects that are fully packaged and ready to scale. So we've been testing them. We've been testing them, teaching them, improving them, and and doing the graphics and getting it all looking good to actually be able. It's one thing delivering it yourself and delivering it in a small group of schools, but to actually be able to scale that for everybody, it needs something. So we will probably launch that first year's worth of projects, the first 5 projects, 1 in each pathway, along with our assessment model, which I haven't even gone into yet, but there's so much of it that so we've already started our teacher training programs. So we have like a level 1, level 2, level 3 training, and then that enables teachers to teach the curriculum, but also build their own project-based learning as well. So they don't have to use our curriculum. The curriculum works on a subscription basis, and I basically created a second company, which is called Da Vinci Life Skills CIC. So it's a community interest non-profit. So we put the curriculum and the assessment model in there, and so that subscription is we're trying to do it on a donation basis,
right?
And so if schools can't afford it, then they can talk to us and we can try and provide it. So those that can pay will help provide it to people that can't afford to pay. So we want to get it out there to everybody. We basically put a really cheap value. I mean, it's very high in value in terms of what we've created, but we've just put a cheap price because I want it to get it out to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's our mission, is to make the change and get it to people.
So it feels like you've done a ton of work just to get to the starting line.
Yes.
And now here we are to kind of launch.
Yeah.
I mean, you have launched, but like it's the next kind of phase, the proof. Listening to all of it, it just, from this once consumer of school education, this is exactly the type of school I would love to have gone to. I don't want to belittle the school. I was very lucky to go where I did, and there were excellent teachers, and but for all of those of us who once were children or have children, it does feel like it's the future. So as you know, I like to try and wrap these conversations up with what I call the long bet. So you've got a 10-year time horizon to make a prediction of something you think will happen, or something you'd like to happen, or both, and maybe use that as a vehicle as well. If there's anything that you haven't talked about that you want to kind of get off your chest, that that use that as a vehicle. But what out there do you see happening? We've got a mental health crisis. We've got a skills shortage, as you said, that's playing out right now. We've got these bottlenecks of people with skills, but also people with the ability to actually have the training to talk to people going through anxiety and depression and all these things. And it just feels like the world is in a complete funk. So how do you see that playing out? And either through the lens of what you're doing, and or you can talk about fusion technology, as Professor Robert Toombs, a history professor at University of Cambridge, did in a previous episode. So whatever you want, it's a blank canvas.
Well, fusion technology would be amazing. Well, I think the key is assessment, and this is the bit that I didn't get to, but I think that's where the actual change will lie, because if we can change how we assess things and what we assess and the value we put towards assessment, that will change everything, and it will be universities that will have to make that change too, and employers, and it's a kind of a group change that we'll have to make in terms of what we're valuing. I think employers already want value skills, and so if we can have proper skills evaluation, The assessments that we've created, we've been talking with Pearson and it's a big and Cambridge assessment, and we're not like trying to get into competition with anybody. We're trying to make that difference, and so we've been also speaking. There's a House of Lords committee that's looking at change in assessment. There's an organisation called Rethinking Assessment that's working with lots of schools now, trying to change assessments, and I think that's where the key to education reform is. And if we can just even reduce GCSEs, some of the top schools, Bedales is a big private school that's been doing this for years, they've done 18 years now, have brought GCSEs down to they do about 4 GCSEs, and they do Bedales assessed courses, which are basically project courses that they've created. Now, King Alfred, Latimer, there's a whole group of other schools, as well as there's 2 state schools, but they've not been allowed to to reduce the GCSEs because they're state schools. But XP School and School 21 have made this change to project-based learning, and it's happening, that change. And so if we can change the assessment and have less GCSEs. So Latimer said they're just going to do maths and English GCSE and then build their own project courses. Yeah. So if this big private schools are starting to do this will be what universities then will look for. So they'll want to see where's your project qualifications.
And that will feed its change.
And then that will drive the change. And so I think what's good about it being started in the private sector is that it's a value. It gives it value rather than the BTEC or the SEND route. If we start this in the state sector, it would go down, this is where the most need is. And the most need is in those kids that are less academic, those kids that have got SEN, special educational needs, and there's a desperate need for something else that's less academic in the state sector. And so if it starts there, it will become the BTEC, which is like, that's slightly a bit less good than a GCSE, but it shouldn't be that. It needs to have equal value. A project qualification needs to have an equal value to a GCSE. Yeah. Because this idea that being more academic gets you a better job or a better paid job is not necessarily true. A plumber earns more than a history professor, I suspect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily true anymore, this idea that vocational learning and manual, skills, and I mean, just in terms of being a designer or a filmmaker or whatever it might be, there are hundreds of jobs that require different skills to academic.
Yeah, no, every year, I know we had A-level results recently, so every year, not everyone's cup of tea, but Jeremy Clarkson puts this sort of tweet out, don't worry, those of you getting results, I got 2 C's and 2 fails or whatever, and now I'm doing this. And, statistically, if you go to Harvard University, if you want to maximize your pay, the best thing to do statistically is to drop out, because Harvard dropouts generally get more money than those. Very skewed by Mark Zuckerberg, let's say, but still, there's something in that.
So doesn't Elon Musk go in and take them, but while they're at university, because he doesn't want them to finish?
Well, that's or even more so to your point about employers. One thing that's I've talked about before in previous episodes is people who get into these elite Ivy League universities go to Google or whoever and say, "Look, here's my acceptance letter. I've got in. I've got the value of me going is just this piece of paper. It's not actually going and getting saddled with debt. So can I come and work with you instead?" And that shows you how, anachronistic some of these structures that we have are, and particularly in the world of AI. So that's the work you're doing is very much an antidote to that. So thank you. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work? And if they want to, in some way, you mentioned there's a non-profit element. How do they find you? See where you are, and kind of maybe contribute to that.
We have a website, which we have 2 actually, but davincilifeskills.com is the easiest place to find us. We have Biophilic Education website as well, but for our teacher training. But you can find it all through davincilifeskills.com. And there's the one thing I want to just say too, in terms of a vision of what I'd like to see, is education coming out of a political thing. That's in terms of you, when you were
Yeah.
saying like you'd have a vision for the future of what you want. One is assessment and one is education not being in politics, being run by a cross-party.
Right.
It needs to be cross-party. It needs to not be changed every 4 years.
Isn't there something about the day the Department of Education was created was the sort of the start of the collapse of education?
Yeah,
I don't know if
it shouldn't be a political
Yeah.
football. It just shouldn't be, and it needs to be run by experts, and it needs to be accountable, and it needs to be long-term. The vision, not a 4-year vision. It needs to be like, if you've made that decision, you've got to stay there and see it through, and be based on research.
But to maybe counter that, rather than a sort of wise department cross-party that's run by experts at a central level, just more choice and experimentation at a local level rather than
That's true.
a top-down body. So look, this is a very apolitical podcast, but putting taxes on education or increasing the cost of education to people who want to pay for it does, and therefore seeing the shutting down of schools and then the increasing load on the state sector that's come from private schools going out of business because they're now paying VAT.
Yeah.
I get it to some extent, but what we want is schools trying things out.
Yeah.
And hubs. This hub movement is quite exciting as well.
Yeah, because you could build hubs within schools.
Right.
I mean, a big state school could have a little hub within it that's doing something different and that has different pathways. You could, schools could become community centres for learning and be much more open. And I think with technology that is possible. So I'm quite excited how technology is going to shift that, and how we could have growing food at a school, having a cafe, having co-work spaces for parents, and it could become much more of a long life learning centre and have shared facilities, which they do. A lot of schools now have sports centres that are shared, and I think it's exciting what's coming.
Very much so. So you're also on LinkedIn and Twitter.
I am on LinkedIn.
Or X.
I don't do much social media. I struggle. I don't have the time for that. But LinkedIn, I'm on. That's all I can cope with.
No, fair enough. And LinkedIn's bad enough. So you're doing well. Don't change that. Well, look, thank you so much. There's 100 things I still want to talk to you about, but I know you need to get back to doing God's work. So thanks,
thank you.
And keep it up. And let's have you on again soon once the rollout's happened.
Yeah, thank you very
Cheers.
much. Thanks.
This has been Meeting People. I've been your host, Amal Pandya. This is a podcast produced by Matt Cooper with music composed by Loverman.